projected or that's about to come out. We see, projects, and when I refer to projects, I just mean developers who are logging in and registering on our system. We see the numbers shoot up for whatever platform it's on, which is great. I mean, it speaks to the fact that a lot of developers, both on the iPhone side and Android side, are very excited about new devices. They're very excited about what's going on. I mean, the real winner here, I feel, beyond the platforms themselves are the developers and the consumers, because there's just so much, there's so many distribution channels, there's so much that's coming out. And because there's so many distribution channels, and because you have these two diametrically opposed models, you have Apple constantly iterating, you have Google constantly iterating, and that won't stop, like Eric said, in any foreseeable time that I can see.
So the consumer definitely can benefit from all this activity and focus in the market.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think the consumer benefits, manyfold.
So it would be a slower, calmer stream if, say, it was just Apple as they regularly innovated along. But if you add a counter, the development doubles or triples.
Yeah, I mean, I think developers, especially in mobile and especially in any space that's just starting to galvanize and starting to grow and still in this sort of nascent period, you see a lot of people who are just excited about new technology and excited about building new cool things on various platforms. And Android, as Rob was saying, lends itself to certain things. The iPhone lends itself to certain things. There are constraints on one side versus the other. Soon you'll see plenty of other platforms that open up that'll be, sort of competing in terms of how innovative they are and how, how open they are, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I mean, I think the developers benefit because they're able to build newer, cooler things, and users benefit because they're able to use newer and cooler things. That's, I think that's really where.
Before the panel, we were discussing kind of the concept of consortiums of other manufacturers or developers trying to build to create a business to compete with larger businesses. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. I know from the Mobile World Congress, there's a consortium of European developers that are trying to, mutually work together. Do you guys have any opinion on that? Could there, like you said, could there be another player or two or three in the global world market?
No.
No? All right. We like decisive decisions. We had talked about that before.
No, look, there will continue to be a market for feature phones, and we'll see iteration of standards for development of applications on feature phones, all the way up through the community college smartphones, right? Things that don't kind of fit into the category of the NYU smartphones, the iPhone type devices. That's probably, again, I'm sorry.
Well, there are 4 billion phones in the world, and there's a potential for there to be 4 billion more of the non-smartphone tier, so more development in emerging nations and countries that will, over time, grow to be someone's first computer.
Exactly, and I guess that's why I'm positing that significant momentum on the feature phone front is probably not something we're really going to see. That phones are going to tend to be smarter and smarter as consumers are getting smarter about the devices, right? And I think people are getting smarter about what it is they want in a mobile device faster than the phones and devices themselves are iterating. So you're going to see lots of innovation at the platform level, right? Count on what you see on the iPhone right now being really early technology for Apple. Count on Android today being their first stabs at their hobby in mobile, which will grow up to be their profession. All this stuff from Microsoft and Windows Mobile, these guys have a lot of money in the bank, and they will not give up on mobile. If Windows Phone 7 Series doesn't cut it for them, count on them trying something new, and they're just going to keep banging at it because it's way too important. You've got RIM. RIM somehow manages to continue to hold on to a key market segment. They probably will continue to do so. I've lost a lot of bets and even some money along the way counting them out. So I no longer count out RIM. And then you'll have sort of tiered down from there others who at the platform level have their own app environment. That doesn't leave a lot of room for things like the application consortium you mentioned, which is largely carrier driven, right? Carriers trying to bring control back to them to do anything to capture the mind share of developers that are really going to want to write for the platforms where there's monetizable opportunity. And you take a whole bunch of the capabilities out of the phone and strip it down to something that's really fundamental and basic with a lightweight browser and a lightweight application development environment, and it's really hard for a developer to make any meaningful money off of that.
Yeah, I think a lot of this room probably was not so aware of developing applications for a phone prior to the iPhone's existence, and developing for, Brew, Qualcomm sort of setup is sort of less attractive from all of the iteration across all the porting you would have to do to different screen sizes and form factors. And then they were getting back to the rev share, it was just not so attractive. So I think, yeah, in terms of the app world, hoping that there's sort of a second tier beyond iPhone and Android that are likely people will want to develop for, whether it's Windows or Palm or RIM. But developing apps for the low-end phones, I think it's probably not a lot of effort will be exerted there.
But getting back to innovation, I know you guys mentioned the feature-specific use of phones. What are some of the what can we expect to be the norm to use your phone? Like, are we going to be using visual search now because of Google Goggles and stuff like that? Can you guys comment on that?
I mean, yeah, we have an innovation lab that we set up. My co-founder Oliver Palmer heads it up, and he talks to universities all over the world, and there's some stuff happening in sort of the Cambridge labs and some other places where they're looking at and don't forget we're talking about technology. Google is not that old of a company, and if you look at someone like Facebook, they've suddenly come on, and you shouldn't discount them because that you can become huge out of nowhere. But if you look at some of the things that Nokia are looking at in the future, it's nanotechnology. It's integrating the phones with not just clothes you wear, but your organic computing, and I think that's something that is in the fairly near future, which we're seeing already, is sort of head-up displays on goggles, and the whole augmented reality that I was talking about before. That can easily be in your contact lenses or in glasses, and I think that
chips in the brain.
And once that starts happening, you can. You might get a situation where you don't use a phone anymore to talk to people because it's all voice activated and it's in your, permanently in your ear and in your tooth. And that sort of, world is, could spell the death of people like RIM. And then then you'll take the whole, speech and communicating with friends away from the phone, and that'll happen somewhere else, either on Facebook or in your head. And then the device will just be your connection to, to the net. And so there's a lot of. And 10 years in the future, or 5 or 10 years in the future, but because it's so new and technologically kind of, there's some weird stuff happening out there. I wouldn't feel that secured at any of these companies.
Apps for your head. That's a little scary.
I can't wait to build ads on that platform.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think first we'll have to make the leap to true cloud computing, where your phone is synced with your home and your office, and it's all just completely seamlessly done together. And perhaps part of the rise in Google's ability to offer so much for so little is the price of memory has gone down 5-fold. Storage space is just astronomically cheap now. Do you feel that because of that, it will push us towards cloud computing more quickly? Especially in the IT environment, to get things kind of off-site because people are in and out and traveling constantly.
For us, it's I think taking advantage of cloud computing as well as all that inexpensive local storage on the device. The Times iPhone app, as we mentioned, saves all of that content locally on the device. So when you hop on the subway, you can read it offline and browse through and even see ads. But at the same time, we have some of the preferences for some of our apps, and we're going to continue to iterate personalized preferences that will be available in the cloud. So there's some of both, I think, to take advantage of moving forward. The increased memory and processor on these devices, as well as everything that sort of cloud computing offers for cross-platform functionality.
We need to use it because we've got offices in Sydney and London, and you need to have that for continuity, et cetera, But I think that in 5 years there won't be, it'll be fast internet for everyone all over the world, and it'll be, we'll be thinking about, remember back in the day when we had to, connect to 3G or there was a connection. I think it'll all, more and more it'll become a thin client because everything will come as fast as you want it from wherever you are, whenever you are, and it'll be in the subways too. It is in other countries.
Would you care to stop for 1 second and define thin client? Because I think that might have slipped past a few people.
I mean, I think if you look at look at laptops, so that you have this, a big fat laptop, which you can't use on the plane because it's too big, and then if you're looking at sort of the Sony Vaio, it gets smaller, but it's still got a lot of processing power inside. It still costs $2,000. If you're looking at things like the iPad, which I think will be a revolutionary device, or even I was in the Sony store in Tokyo, and they're producing these really little new Sony Vaios. And just the ease of use of those machines, they're not only getting smaller so that you can take them around with you, but they're taking all the stuff out of them. You don't need all that processing power in them. And Google Chrome's coming out, and that's going to be an operating system, so you don't need Windows anymore. And so what a thin, it means you're getting less and less stuff on the computer. So, and if you look at what, the iPad, it's going to be, that's amazing value at $500 or whatever they're selling it at. And nothing will be on the computer. All your storage of your files will be in the cloud, i.e., and Google's already doing this. And really you won't, your device here won't have anything on it. It'll just be a window into all of that stuff, and you won't need to do the, I think it's great that, because I hate having to sync up, but you won't need to do that anymore. It'll all just, it'll be there. And that'll mean the device will get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And when that's the case, I can see people like Sony and the device manufacturers, they're going to have a hard time because they're going to get less and less and less money. Somebody like Apple with the iPad knows that they have a whole bunch of 30% coming out of, of the App Store, and that's going to get even bigger. My mum's going to use it as a reader, where she's, my mum still doesn't use the iPhone, but and then when that happens, they'll win because they've got that model. If you're a hardware manufacturer like HTC, it's going to be hard because you won't be cheaper.
Becomes more and more of a commodity.
And because Apple's going to be busy suing you too.
Well, Apple did spend approximately $1 billion of their own money to develop the A4 chip, or A8 chip, excuse me. And with the
Used for?
It's going to be in the iPad.
Oh.
But with the merging of video cards no longer separate, now it's part of the central processing unit. And like you said, used to be a spinning hard drive, now it's solid state memory. All those things are kind of converging, to a highly compact but amazingly powerful device. So do you think that that Google did themselves a disservice by coming out with the Nexus One of their own after making deals, say with the Motorola and other companies, or is it just that important that they would do it eventually? They might as well do it just right now, like immediately.
It's not. I mean, it's still HTC making the device. You know what I mean? So it's
right, but they're selling it with the European sales model, which probably doesn't make AT&T and Verizon very happy. In the U.S., where it's an unlocked device. I mean, that's common in Europe, but it's called revolutionary in the U.S. Is it revolutionary? I guess is a good question.
I think so, and I think that if you look at the models that it's going to disrupt, I mean, traditionally carriers have charged you for the phone calls you make to other people. If that can, and it's not fast enough yet, but when that goes all over VoIP, it's just, and I think Skype's going to become a very, very important company now that the management have bought back the company. And I think that you're going to have soon it'll just be free calls because it'll be over all over VoIP. And I think that that's Google is just trying to get more pieces of the chain, because I think that one of the reasons why Apple I think is so good is it's nothing to do with technology really. It's because the design is so nice. Like I really like the way the phone feels and fits in my pocket. And people feel that way about the iPod, and that's why the iPod, Sony had all of the MP3 players, and why didn't they win? It's because the iPod looked cooler and people wanted to have it. And the iPhone's the same. It still feels the nicest. It feels expensive. It feels metal. It doesn't feel tinny and plasticky and crappy like the Nokias do. And they're starting to realize that. And the Nexus One is a really great example because the design is nice. You want to have the device. And I think for a lot of people, I mean, Motorola, wouldn't believe that when they, the best-selling phone of all time, the Motorola Razr, is just really nice. Kind of, it feels more metallic. They made it in pink. And that really worked, and the engineers were going as if that's going to work, but it does. And I think that, my reason for backing Apple, I think over Google, is that they're really design focused. So everything comes from a point of design and looking beautiful. And whereas Google, it's more tech focused. And I think that the vast majority of people who do things and who are interested in things, would rather have a phone that feels nicer in your pocket and is easier to use than one which has apps that run in the background. I mean, people don't even know what that means. And they've got adverts saying, get the Verizon blah, 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 because apps run in the background. I don't even know what that means. You know, but I do know that my iPhone feels nice, and when I show it to friends, they go, "Wow, you're cool," and that's the set, and that's why the iPad will sell a lot as well. And I think that distinction is why I think Apple is.
I think with
oh, sorry. Oh, I'll go ahead. although to that point, and this kind of circles back with what you mentioned earlier about cloud computing, I think one of the interesting things that puts Google and that puts Android in a unique position is that, you know, there's that design issue and that aesthetics issue, which I think, you know, they're obviously, you know, Apple has some expertise in. But when you have access to a lot of the you know, web services capabilities and a lot of the underlying infrastructure that Google's developer services is built on top of, like Google App Engine or, you know, the X hundreds of APIs that they have that, you know, developers are able to access, it really gives, you know, the development community for Android a very, you know, visceral, you know, capability to take advantage of a lot of the very interesting and a lot of the very innovative stuff that Google has already done on the web and just kind of port it over in a way that's easy because of cloud computing and because of the fact that they kind of took all of this into account initially and they're able to apply it to this new platform.
So you're saying that they're going to come up with something that's so amazing that it'll mean that people will buy Android phone instead of an iPhone?
I'm not necessarily saying that. I'm just saying that the development community, it's something for the development community to be excited about when they're able to, you know, leverage APIs for Google Voice or APIs for Google App Engine or, you know, anything else and build really interesting, really cool things that already intertwine into the lives of their consumers. And I think that's exciting for developers, which means that you'll see, you know, like I mentioned earlier, just more interesting stuff come from Android. Not more interesting than the iPhone, but I'm just saying in general, objectively.
iPhone and Apple really and iTunes have set a bar, and it's not just a bar for what the current platform is, but it's sort of a bar around what innovation is and the rate at which innovation needs to occur. And I think now with multiple OEMs, multiple carriers being involved in Android, and with this sort of onslaught of development around that platform with sort of multiple players, though Apple does an amazing job with all of their products sort of from cradle to grave, there's just so many large companies and entities around Android. I think it'll be hard not to see some real success in the platform.
I'm going to throw out a slightly contrarian point of view here, just for fun. I think Google is having an identity crisis in mobile, and I don't know that they've yet figured out how to solve it. Take a look at the product lines that they've introduced. They have Android as an operating system. Apps don't really fit in the Google world of we make money off of search, right? You think about all the product lines that Google has introduced over time, there's one that they make money off of. You could argue that they've now distributed it with their ad network across multiple sites, but it's fundamentally one product. It's contextual advertising, whether in a search context or in the context of someone else's content. So here's Android. Here's an operating system where people are writing real applications for it in a real software development environment. You can't throw your little JavaScript tag in there and take a look at all the content on the page and figure out that, hey, this is an application about dogs and not just dogs, about Pekingese. Let's make sure we've got a little dog ad for the nearest puppy mill, right?
But they can build that into their, but really they could build that into their SDK.
They could. It's a technology departure from where they make their money. Their business really exists because they're able to do what they do at massive scale. And apps really aren't a massive scale. They're a scale business. They're not a massive scale business the way the web is. There's a natural impediment to scale. Then you look at their mobile advertising products. They have the AdSense network, AdSense for mobile. They just spent $750 million with a B dollars on AdMob, a company that had net revenues of maybe $25–30 million, right? Something seeming a little bit out of balance there, given that they already had a competing product line that could have caught up at some point in time. And you get the sense of a company that sees that there's an enormous opportunity to be captured, right? You've got the guys at the strategy level at Google and the executive committee saying, mobile, it's going to be bigger than the web. We need a real foothold there. But I think at the executional level, what we're seeing is a whole lot of stuff just being kind of thrown out there without any clear, cohesive strategy behind it.
Being able to sell power and owning the dumb pipes of a
Oh,
distribution network.
That's another direction altogether, right? Outside of the space of mobile, where sure they're doing lots of experimental things to try to get access to more data, right? That's really what's fundamentally behind that. At least I would argue. I'll throw out my pointy hat theory related to Android, and you're all welcome to throw darts after you hear this. I actually think that Google doesn't want the Android application marketplace to succeed. I think that they're intentionally promoting fragmentation so that people feel the pain of what it's like to build apps and go right back to building for the web. And they'll focus on, and they'll focus on
that might be the quote of the evening.
But they'll focus on all the new generation of web technologies which have appiness as an attribute, right? The ability to do a little bit of local storage and a little bit of local processing capability.
GPS.
Sure, absolutely. Access to the hardware features, but I think they're messing with us. I think they really.
Is that why the vast majority of the apps are free on the Android store? Because.
No, that's just because nobody wants to pay for them.
Okay.
And paying for them is hard. You know what I mean? It's not as easy as on the other one. There's parts of the stuff I kind of agree with. I mean, I suppose what do you do if you're Google and you're suddenly the most awesome company at what you do, and then what do you do next? And I think they're trying to vertically integrate in a number of ways. You know, actually in all directions. But then it's almost a Christ. We're on top of this huge big thing. Let's try and stop ourselves from falling off it. And I think the sad thing is that Google's such a cool company, and the guys who started it have got really good, the whole don't be evil thing. I think, and when you look at companies where there's so many companies are doing things the wrong way, a lot of the carriers are, and Google seems to do things the right way, then they're just getting too big, and people are just trying to kind of pull them down, and they're a bit like a wandering giant, wondering, where to go next, I think sometimes.
30,000 people working at Google, right? It's not a small entrepreneurial innovative company anymore. It's this massive machine that takes an awful lot of effort to steer or turn in any direction. And there's no question that they're going to find success in mobile, right? They're too big.